As I announced before, I really like the visiting, socializing at the beginning of meetings. We're also kind of waiting for Zoom people to join, and there are 2 or 3 people that said they're going to, and they haven't yet. But hey, they're busy, they couldn't make it. We'll get started without. So I'd like to welcome everyone to Rotary Club on the 1st of November, 2022. We do have some visitors, so Jeff, can you introduce both your visitors?
My pleasure to introduce a potential new member, Lori Skio. Is that close?
Spot on.
Oh, good. And she is the Ramper with Ramper Innovations, and she is the CEO. No. COO, Chief Operating Officer of Ramper Innovations, and she's doing a good job. They're doing a really good job. Please welcome Lori.
And then, yeah, you're being chaperoned. You're being chaperoned by.
I'm being chaperoned by my granddaughter, Miss Hazel, and I apologize for not introducing her. That was a very bad thing. Thank you.
Well, and Jeff's always telling me about his wonderful granddaughter, and he probably says the same thing to you guys, right? So, Hazel, welcome.
Thank you.
You know, I'd say your grandpa's probably at least an 8 on a scale of 1 to 10. Do you think so? Maybe.
Probably.
Okay.
What's a dangerous question?
Okay. And then, actually, I have a guest, Mitch Pies, and you can stand up if you want, Mitch. Actually, he's, I tell him I'm twisting his arm really hard to join, and he says I'm not twisting too hard, but wants to check us out a few times to see if anything of what I told him is true about us being a decent group of people, and we do good things. But you'll get to kind of see that. Do you mind giving us 2 minutes on kind of how long you've been in Sitka, a little bit about yourself?
Sure, 3.5 years, give or take. Moved most recently from St. Louis, Missouri. My wife retired from a hospital system. We have 2 daughters here that are both married in Sitka. And this is where we wanted to go, mainly because of the grandkids. And that's it. Yeah.
And he's got a famous son-in-law in town, so Jerome Husky. Everyone knows Jerome, right? Yeah, Carl raised his hand.
You know when he was born, does that count?
It does. But now, if you've ever wondered how Jerome possibly married up, we've got the rest of the story now. So it's love and respect for the Valley of the Flowers, where I grew up, and here we're on Tlingit land, so they've been good stewards of the land, just like back in my hometown, the Native Americans were good stewards of the land. So we're grateful for that. So a couple of announcements. They're still making progress on Zoom. Actually, Sharon was going to talk about pumpkin carving. Several of you were pumpkin carving 2 days ago, and anyone want to talk about it briefly? Jeff?
I have nominated Carl Stedman because he was there as well.
Okay. I saw some pictures. He was standing in the background.
I was only there for a little bit because I had to take my mom back upstairs, but I think it was another successful project. It looks like all the people in the home that were down there watching and interacting enjoyed it very much. So my hat goes off to Sharon because it seems like she spearheads that every year. You did another outstanding job.
Yeah. And so at the Pioneer Home, the Rotary Club's been carving pumpkins for 30 years? Who knows? Some of you might know. Long time. Pen? Oh, of course, I think there's. What other announcements? Jeff?
I'll do one of a couple. There's Whale Fest is this weekend coming up. Wednesday night, there's something going on Wednesday night. I forget exactly what it is, but you can go to whalefest.org and find out. And then Friday there is the Whalefest Grind, which will be at the Centennial Building. And those will be a pretty doggone good one. And then there's a fun run, there's all kinds of other things in the whale watches or wildlife tours, et cetera, et cetera. So that's this coming up weekend.
Yeah, so Wellfest actually, yeah, like you said, all starting Wednesday, I think. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Go to Civic Sound Science Center and join Wellfest.
A lot of it's at the Centennial Building as well.
Any other announcements? Okay, we've got Cindy online, so Zoom is, oh, you guys can see. Okay, so Zoom is coming up. I'd like to introduce our presenter today, Chris McGraw. Probably doesn't need a lot of introduction, but thanks, Chris, for coming and kind of giving us an overview from your perspective of the cruise ship season. This last Thursday night, I went to City Hall. There was a joint Assembly Planning Commission meeting, and the city presented their take and had some data. I think their PowerPoint's available if you reach out to the planning department. I think I want to get it, but I've got a hard copy that I printed, and I just wanted to touch on a few things, and Chris is going to fill in some of the blanks. But first of all, the city's a big part of the city's information was the survey. And I annoy some of you by sending surveys out, but I'm a big believer in surveys and how city government can be better if they get more feedback from a more diverse segment of the population. And I think we're a great segment to give them, that type of feedback. But the first number I went to, it's who I am, was the sales tax revenue. And Chris and I compared notes on how we calculated it, but the city has reported sales tax revenue collected over the last number of years, and 2021 really can't look at those numbers, and put too much weight into them. But in 2019, from the middle 6 months of the year, the tourism season, the city collected $9.6 million in sales tax. And that was a big year. That was huge. The city doesn't have final numbers yet, but the way I did the math, in that same 6 month period in 2022, they're just under 14 million. So it's an increase of 44%. And when John Leach speaks to us, one of my first questions to him is going to be, tell us locals how you're going to spend the money, how we're going to benefit. But anyway, huge increase in sales tax revenue. Another big thing in the city numbers, and it was part of that survey, was traffic. And greater than 50% of the people that completed the survey, and I think in a town of 9,000 people, I think over 600 people completed the survey. So it was, pretty decent representation. But over 50%, complained a little bit about traffic, and there's different components of traffic. The stoplight at Lincoln Lake and Lincoln. There's Halibut Point Road. There's Sawmill Creek Road, and so over 50% said, "Hey, we were impacted." Well, that's not a surprise to anyone in the room, but. I live out Sawmill Creek Road, and I was impacted by traffic this summer, but it was more, for me personally, the road work. And, I'd be stopped by a flag person and then waved, and it was a little bit frustrating. But I think we need to be careful to separate out, bus traffic and road repairs. And that kind of affected downtown a little bit because people diverted. But, and then actually, in the survey, the city asked the specific question about closing Lincoln Street. 38% of the respondents wanted Lincoln Street closed again next year, but only on cruise ship passenger days greater than 5,000. And this last year, I think they started at 3, moved it up to 4, and then ended up at 5. So the city kind of did an adjustment. There were others that wanted it at 6,000 or 7,000 cruise ship passengers. So the city's listening, and the city assembly responded to that type of data. So the survey is really helping our elected officials know what can and shouldn't be done. But anyway, you know, by way of introduction to Chris, so I mean, Chris has you know, built the cruise ship dock. He's brought tourism into Sitka at a little higher level. You know, the biggest upside is you know, the sales tax revenue. But I think the city also reported that a lot of shop owners up and down Lincoln had gotten to their best year of sales ever early to mid-July. So when you're taking these local business owners who are also key members of our community, and they're exceeding their best year by mid-July, then, you know, it brings a lot of revenue into the community. Anyway, I'm rambling. Chris has a PowerPoint. Actually, welcome everyone who are on Zoom now. Sorry for the technological challenges, but you know, Chris, take it over, and let's give Chris a welcome.
Laura, record.
Oh, sorry.
And make sure you share the screen.
So share screen. What'd you say?
He's got his presentation up there, but you also need to record.
Okay, so I'm gonna hit record. Record on this computer. Record on the cloud.
On the cloud.
On the cloud.
Recording in progress.
And then you'll do share screen. And Chris has a 20-30 minute presentation. There'll be a little time for questions afterwards. So let's hold the questions if we can. I guess you could take a question midway. But thanks, Chris.
All right. My name is Chris McGraw. I'm the manager of the Sitka Sound Cruise Terminal facility we constructed back in 2010, 2011. Since that time, have been growing each year gradually, and then with this last season being our largest season to date. If anybody has any questions while I go along, feel free to just raise a hand. Happy to answer anything while it comes up. So I'm going to give basically a summary of this season, how it went for us, hit on some of our challenges, and then look forward to the 2023 season. And I addressed some of this stuff at the assembly meeting last Thursday when I addressed them, but I'm going to try to touch on some additional items. So the 2022 season, we were Sitka, or actually, sorry, the cruise ship terminal received 196 cruise ship calls, for a total of about 340,000 passengers. The ships this year, this will be the first full year back since the COVID, were ranging anywhere from about 60% capacity to 100% capacity. Starting off early in the season, ships were definitely lighter, they weren't full, and then as the season progressed, we saw that a lot of the newer, larger ships were running at real close to 100%, and even in some cases over 100%. So those ships would be the Royal Caribbean, Ovation of the Seas, Quantum of the Seas. The larger ships that come to Sitka have a capacity, double berth capacity of about 4,200, and some of the peak days were 4,400 guests on those ships. And also to kind of touch on some terminology, cruise ship capacities, so the numbers you see published in the newspaper, those are based on what's called lower berth. So that's if there's 2 people in every stateroom. A lot of times you'll have staterooms with kids and families, so the capacity of the ship can actually be over 100%. So any of these numbers I'm talking about from projections are based on lower berth, and you could actually have more passengers then. We received, so the 340,000 that we received was at the dock. Sitka received about another 40,000 via tendering. So we had a total of 380,000 passengers, or 383,000 I think is the exact number in Sitka. And the projection for the season, assuming everything was 100% lower berth, was about 450,000. So I think we ended up at about 80% of what was planned. And then there were some issues in Skagway with a dock being closed due to some landslides. Sitka got 9 additional ship calls because of that, and that accounted for 23,500 passengers that we got from Skagway. So this kind of touches on some information I just noted. So we have 2 berths at our facility. We can take 2 ships at once. We totaled 340,000 passengers. To downtown Sitka, there were roughly 40,000 passengers tendered. 11,000 of those were diverted from our dock. Early in the season, we had a cruise ship damage one of our dolphins, which closed one of our berths for about 6 weeks. And then to give you kind of some perspective, the largest day that we had at the dock, and most likely the largest day in Sitka, was August 9th, with a total of 6,983 passengers. And that was actual passengers. So you can see this Ovation of the Seas has a lower berth capacity of 4,200, and it had 4,342. So it was actually over 100% on that date. Referencing the dock damage, I know a lot of people have asked me questions about this, wanted to know what happened. Our outside dolphin, a ship was coming in, making a turn on a beautiful May day, and misjudged their turn and ended up smacking in to the mooring dolphin, which consists of 4 piling that are 48-inch diameter, 1-inch thick wall, and it's what the ships tie their sterns to. And the ship hit it and broke 3 out of the 4 piling. And you can see that's an underwater picture there, and then an above water picture of one of the piling. It took about 6 weeks to repair, and as I mentioned, we lost about where did that go? Yeah, about 11,000 passengers. It was like 10 ship calls because of that.
In that case, do the cruise companies pay for your repairs?
Not to date.
Why not?
So we have insurance. We filed an insurance claim. Our insurance company paid the contractor less the deductible, and currently they are trying to recover from the cruise ship companies, or I should say the cruise ship company's insurance company.
I know they carry insurance for things like that.
They do. It's, you know, they're part of a kind of a large conglomerate called a club, where I think multiple cruise lines are together,
Yeah.
and it's just not a timely process. So looking at the season, kind of everything from a facility standpoint, other than the cruise ship hitting the dock, everything went well. This was our first full season with our new expanded facility. Passenger flow was well. You know, we could fill up 5,000 to 6,000 people, and it didn't seem too crowded. Looking at overall, our largest challenge for the dock is our shuttle operation. And as you can imagine, if we get 7,000 people, we have to move, I would say, probably 80% of them into town and then back out of town. So, you know, you're moving 10,000, 12,000 people a day. And previously, Alaska Coach Tours, which I'm sure you've seen their buses around town, they provided the shuttle operation for us. They also do tour products, so they'll take people to Raptor Center, Fortress of the Bear, things of that nature. And with the growth of our facility, the shuttle operation has kind of become more than they're willing to handle. So starting in 2023, our company will be operating the shuttle in-house. We have procured 45-foot, 60-passenger motor coaches, and we'll be hiring shuttle drivers. So if anybody has a CDL and wants a job, you can see me after the meeting. And so obviously finding help in town is difficult. I know even school bus companies have trouble finding school bus drivers. So We're currently constructing additional workforce housing to house 30 people to try to help with the housing issue, and working to recruit CDL drivers from where we can.
Is that what you're planning on putting on up at the old Guns of Alaska location?
Yes, we'll be using that as workforce housing.
Do you have more plans, you have plans for any additional shopping centers out there?
No additional retails currently planned. So like I said, this season, one of the biggest challenges was shuttling passengers. Especially you look at the cruise ship schedule, some days ships arrive at 11 o'clock in the morning, and when that happens, everybody on board is wanting to get off. They've all eaten breakfast, they want to get to town or get on their tour and experience, so you end up with a large influx of passengers all at once. So you have 3,000 to 4,000 people that you need to move basically as quick as you can. So it takes a fleet of roughly 16 to 20 motor coaches, 16 to 20 drivers, and then you have to have the space to load them and the space to unload them. At the dock, we have set up, we can load up to 6 coaches at once. The problem is on the town side, you get to Centennial Hall, and it's used for shuttle, it's used for tours, it's used for taxis, independent operators, boat harbor, and you end up with congestion. And I think any of you that looked at the city's survey results, that was one of the main areas of congestion was Centennial Hall and both the vehicular and then the pedestrian traffic that flows out from that site. Our buses, there's been a lot of talk. I think one of the major complaints that people have is the buses and the noise. Currently what we're operating is the bus here on the right. These are called an MCI D4500. Ours are roughly, most of them are mid 2004, 2005. They all have 4-stroke diesel engines, and they cost about $50,000 to buy. People say, why don't you go electric? So MCI, which is the same company, makes a comparable called the J4500 Charge. These are brand new. Just start moving them out. I think there's like a year or two wait. They're roughly $1 million a piece. And currently we don't charge for the shuttle. It's basically part of the docking fee. So from a financial standpoint, we would need to spend $20 million to get electric buses, plus the infrastructure to charge them. And if you look at where most electric buses in this country are being utilized, they're with government entities, and they're able to get federal grants for those programs. And would love to partner with the city or the tribe to look for grants where we could start implementing electric buses into our program. But with the current dock revenues and our structure for not charging for the shuttle, it's just not financially feasible to operate electric buses. So what I'm looking at trying to do to reduce the number of buses on the road is to improve the shuttle operation. Ultimately, we have X number of passengers we need to move as quickly as we can, and the only way to reduce, or I should say increase the number of passengers we move right now is to add more buses. Or you have to reduce the amount of time it takes a bus to get to town and get back and reload. Current round trip time ranges anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes depending on traffic to Centennial Hall. I've worked with the principal at Baranoff School. She actually approached me about this concept, and currently Baranoff School's playground is old. I went to school there and I think it's the same playground. And it's much larger than what they need. And what she proposed was utilizing half the playground as a shuttle drop-off and then adding parking for the school and adding a parent drop-off lane. And as you can see, kind of my concept is you'd come down Sawmill Creek, take a ride on Baranoff, and then the bus lanes would actually come through the playground, and then you'd come back out on Oyo Way by the police station and take a right. And the concept of this is that we would cover the cost for all this work, provide the school with a brand new playground, and then utilize it for shuttle drop in the summer, and then it'd be school parking in the winter, which if any of you had kids at Baranoff, the parking there is non-existent. So this is a concept that I've provided to the city, and it would improve that round trip time, reduce the number of buses on the road. There are, I'm sure, multiple issues with it, but I think we need to start thinking about ways to decrease the congestion at Centennial Hall, which would improve issues with jaywalking across Harvard Drive and help spread things out a little bit. And I'm open to any other locations that anybody else would want to pitch, and happy just to have a discussion about alternate locations.
Chris, how would that work when school is in session?
School, the playground would be fenced off, and it would basically be a complete separate area. So as you-
Will it interfere with school buses?
Nope, school bus drop-off would remain in the same location.
Good question.
One of the questions that I got at the assembly meeting this last week was, why should the city be involved in the shuttle operation at all? Why should they help with location? And my response is ultimately that shuttle is what brings the sales tax revenue to downtown. So the city provided a number of roughly $2 million in additional sales tax revenue in the fourth quarter of 2022 versus 2019. And I kind of did a little extrapolation. We had 120,000 passengers during that time period. So it worked out to $16.67 per passenger. If you look at the first quarter of 2023, which would be July, August, September, we had 260,000 passengers. You extrapolate that same per passenger number, you're looking at an additional 4.3 million in the first quarter. So that's $6.3 million in additional sales tax revenue that came into Sitka this summer. And the shuttle is important because it provides a free way for those passengers to get downtown where they can visit the merchants, visit the attractions, take the local tours, and spend their money so that that sales tax revenue goes into our general fund, and us as locals will benefit from that. Ultimately, if we don't have the economic development to bring in that sales tax revenue in order to fund city programs, that money's going to have to come from locals through increased sales tax, increased property tax,
Or reduce spending.
or reduced spending. Which
Let's keep the options
which
open.
I've lived here for 43 years, and I haven't seen that happen yet.
I know, but it needs to.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Is there ever any plan that people from Sitka would be able to travel like to Juneau or get on the boat? I mean, I know it's against the Jones Act and all that, but have they ever tried to make any exceptions?
With ships being foreign flagged, yeah, it is a Jones Act issue, and my understanding is you basically have to embark and disembark at a port of entry, so you can't go just between Juneau and Sitka and vice versa.
If you can, or any.
Yeah, I do know that there's been attempts at legislation to try to modify the Jones Act recently, because during COVID, with Canada being closed, there were some exceptions made so that ships didn't have to stop in Canada, and they'd like to try to make that permanent, but we'll see where that goes. So kind of looking forward to next year. This is a graph that goes from 1996 through projected 2023. Next year is roughly around 550,000 passengers, and that's based on a double berth capacity. So if all the ships have all the beds full, we'll see that. The split up between the dock and downtown is roughly 500 to 510,000 at the dock, and then 40 to 50,000 tendering. So the previous peak year was 2008 at 289,000. So this year we were roughly 90,000 over that, which is a pretty significant jump. And then you're looking at another 150,000, 180,000 to next year.
Chris, can you check the chat and see if that's a question for you?
How would passengers get to and from Baranoff School? Would there be smaller shuttles to bring them between Centennial Hall and Baranoff? I would guess that most of the passengers would walk. I actually walked it in about 2.5 minutes, but there's been a push to have some type of an on-off shuttle in the downtown area, and what I would envision is some type of an electric tram that could have a couple of stopping points. that would start at Baranoff, and you could have a drop-off at Centennial Hall, possibly a drop-off on the backside of Harbor Drive, and then maybe go down and hit the Science Center and the National Historic Park, and have one or two of those on a loop to where you did have people that were a little bit mobily challenged. They could get not only access to Centennial Hall, but to the other points of downtown. So looking at that growth from 380 to 550, everybody thinks, oh, that many more people downtown. How can Sitka handle it? And something I've kind of been pushing is distribution. First off, we have good distribution with the fact that the dock where most of the passengers come in is not located in downtown Sitka. So when the ships pull in and there's 6,000 people, they're not all getting off at once. We can only move people so fast in and out of town. So if you kind of look at how many people we can move per hour, you're never going to have all 7,000 people in town, because in order to do that, some are going to have to come back in order before people can come in, just with the number of people we can move per hour. And then the other aspect is, as our numbers grow, local businesses are also going to grow with that increase. So you're going to have new tour operators starting up. I know of a number of independent operators that are building new boats, expanding the sizes of their boats, and that will help take some of that load off of just everybody being in one location at once. Existing tour operators will also expand. So we have a tour company that operates boats, and we're acquiring one new boat this year, and we have a new boat that's coming on in 2024. So that will help distribute those people as well, and we're not the only ones. In addition, you have new attractions. Sciatica is working on a Harbor Point project, which is a 17-acre parcel that's just beyond the dock that the city of Sitka is leasing, and they're planning on doing tour operations there. One that I have in my mind is, with Sciatica as well, is Catlean Bay. They have thousands of acres of private land there that, once the road's in, that could open up a whole new area for tour development. And the goal is getting those passengers distributed. If you look at places like Skagway, it's postage stamp town size, but they have a train that they can put 1,000 people on and move them up into Canada. They got buses that take people everywhere, so you never have all those people in that one spot at once. And it's about distributing the guests on tours and attractions. Go ahead.
Well, I'd like to point out that the city of Sitka voted no to a new top firehouse, but we got that built anyway. We voted no to moving the City Works building, and that got moved anyway. And we moved no to having a traffic circle, but that got put in anyway. So just because we moved no to having a local ship dock doesn't mean it's not time to put one in anyway.
Well, okay, that gets me to my next point. So everybody has asked, how much more can Sitka's numbers grow, right? Are we going to see it double again? So currently we have 2 berths, 2 dock spaces, and then we have some a tendering spot. The large ships only dock. Occasionally they'll tender, but for instance, when our dock got damaged and some of the ships couldn't tie up there, they went elsewhere because they don't want to tender. It's just economically not feasible, and to move that volume of people via tender boats.
Could you build a dock out of the city of Sitka like they wanted to at one time?
Could I build a dock where?
At one time we voted on having a dock from the city of Sitka out, like Ketchikan and some of those places, out into
From the bridge?
Further away from town,
Yeah, but.
like out at Catlean Bay.
Oh, that's
No.
private. Oh.
No, this wasn't Catlean Bay,
No,
this is.
it's-
So I know there was talk about Sawmill Cove having a dock. There was a proposition back in the late 90s to put one right from under the bridge that failed.
Well, anyway, could you people build such, could you do that?
Could I?
Could your company would be interested in putting one in more closer to town?
No, I don't have any interest. And there's a city ordinance that requires a public vote for the use of any city property to construct a dock that can accommodate a cruise ship over, I think it's 300 feet or 350 feet. So before a dock could actually be built downtown, it would have to go to the vote of the people. Back to my point, how many passengers can Sitka accommodate? It really boils down to our dock space. So we currently have 2 docks. We're about 80% booked at this point, and so there is room for growth, but not at the percentage rate we've seen over the past couple of years. Good ports of Ketchikan, Juneau, Skagway that have $1 million plus a year, they all have 4 docks. Ketchikan now has 6 docks.
What about tendering? I know before you ever had a dock, we'd have about, 190, 200,000 people just tendering in. So we'd have to add that potential onto what you have for the max number?
Well, the difference now is that the ships have grown in size considerably since the mid-2000s. So for instance, Royal Caribbean and Norwegian have ships that, and even Princess have ships that are 4,000 passengers.
But Holland America tenders 2,000 passenger ships, because I've been on them.
They do. No, Holland America, the Westerdam, and the Eurodam, which Colin Sitka, they could tender.
Yeah. And they're, 2,000, 2,200.
Yep, but that's not the preference.
So, Chris, you mentioned this at the assembly meeting when someone asked, and you said something like, and I hope I'm not misquoting you, but you saw that kind of $500,000 number kind of, being the ceiling. I mean, and that's kind of, I guess, what the point you're making. But
yeah, I think numbers could gradually grow, because the other thing that will likely happen over the next 10 years is you'll see ships continue to grow. Companies will get larger ships, and so if we have a 2,000 passenger ship at the dock, maybe in 10 years that same company does away with that ship and it ends up being a 3,000 passenger ship. So there will be some growth. Go ahead.
Can you repeat the breakdown between projected passengers that will come in on tenders and projected passengers that will come
So
in?
for next season, roughly 510,000 would be at dock and 40,000 would be tender.
Okay, thank you.
When you talk about the size of the ships getting bigger, how big a ship could you take with what you have now?
Currently, the largest cruise ships in the world are the Oasis class from Royal Caribbean, and we could accommodate one of those. There's none in Alaska, and I won't say never, but they're kind of primarily targeted towards the Caribbean market, water slides and a lot of outdoor spaces. But those are 6,000 passenger ships. So currently, the largest ships in Alaska are the Quantum class ships from Royal Caribbean, which are the Quantum of the Seas and Ovation of the Seas, and they can, max capacity on those ships is about 4,900.
But that's not counting crew though, right?
That's not counting crew. Typically, one of those ships will have about 1,800 crew.
But my question, so then it came up again and they said, oh, nowadays it's too complicated for people on shore to visit on a ship. We wouldn't possibly have enough ID or enough important paperwork. Is that true?
Say, recently, yes, with COVID and the protocols, but I think as things move forward, there's opportunities for local organizations to be invited on board for lunches or tours.
But eventually it could be?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good program.
So Chris, I think if you could work that deal with Baranoff Schools, that'd be very helpful in traffic. But my question is, when the bus comes out and they pull up to, they're gonna come out, they're gonna make a right and go up, and then take the left and go by the police department street. Can they make that left there? That's a pretty tight corner.
From outside of Baranoff?
Yeah, they go out, they take a right, and then they're gonna take a left and go out to Lake Street.
Yeah.
That left, right?
We haven't actually done it, but I've had somebody look at it and they think that it's doable. So, Rich.
One of the things that we used to do is we actually have a soccer league for crew members. We used to play at Mueller Field. Any thought about ways to accommodate crew members to make them feel, welcome and happy in Sitka?
Fred Reeder, who's the local port agent, who's actually retiring next year, he talks about some of those days where, you would have crew soccer matches or they play basketball games sometimes, and that's not really something as the dock operator that I could organize, but somebody with like Fred could organize that, and I think it would be positive. This year, not a significant number of crew were let off the ship. It still was a COVID precaution. But in the future, it's definitely something.
Tuffy built this whole business plan around selling to crews for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, is anybody that you know of thinking about ways of catering to crews to increase business?
We have one retailer at the cruise ship dock that has kind of a convenience store set up, and he's trying to reach out to crew and find out, okay, what products would crew want, because they're on a weekly basis. And one of the big things I understand is that crew orders a lot of Amazon now, and like in Juneau, there's apparently somebody set up that receives Amazon packages from crew for a fee. Services like that, I think, are definitely potential for somebody local to where you can benefit off of the large number of crew. I think the number I ran, we had about 135,000 crew visit the dock this summer. And a lot of them are the same people, just on a weekly basis.
Do the crew have access to your shuttle as well?
They do, so it's free for crew as well. And I've been told about 1/3 of the ship has the potential to get off while they're in port. The other 2/3 are working still.
Does that imply then that you're not counting any crew members that take your buses into town as part of the overall load on the town?
No.
You're only counting passengers.
We actually don't even count passengers. We don't count how many people take the shuttle.
Well, but the point is, you're talking about
a load,
500,000
load in
people.
town, yeah.
But you're not including any potential crew?
No.
Jeez, this is crazy.
I know a lot of the retail stores were shocked how fast the stuff went flying off the shelves this year. I talked to several of them, and by end of June, they were like scrambling to reorder, so I think sales might even go up more next year because they're going to be more prepared for the numbers.
Yeah.
You know, and have a better feeling for what's going on. And I, quite frankly, enjoy walking down, because I'm downtown all the time, down on the street, talking to the tourists. You know, I know it's a big impact on Sitka, but these people want to come to Alaska, and it's just, you know, it's fun to talk to them, because they're excited, even when it's raining out, they're excited.
They do.
On the other hand, there are people like me who simply will not go to town when the ship's in. I hate it. I didn't move here to live in the city.
So in fact, on the city survey, a large percent of local people just don't go downtown, and haven't for years. But
Rich?
I ended up purposely going downtown because I love the atmosphere of the day that the street was closed. Musicians on the street, food stands, stuff like that. Any indication of how the cruise ship passengers like that type of atmosphere, like the fact that the street is closed?
I think overall, yeah, they enjoyed the experience. You know, pretty much everybody we talk to that comes back, you know, because occasionally I'm there when everybody's coming back, and I have not had a single person that said that they had a bad day at Sitka. Even, you know, we've had some days that were fairly ugly for the shuttle wait, and you know, people wait 45 minutes in line. Overall, they're still happy.
Yeah.
And on vacation.
Any idea how Sitka compares to other ports in passenger satisfaction?
Some of the surveys that I've gotten from some of the cruise lines, Sitka ranks typically number 2, and that's behind Glacier Bay, which Glacier Bay is technically not really a port of call, but it's a place that the ships visit.
so there's a question, or a raised hand.
Yeah, Cindy had a raised hand.
How many people do you hope to accommodate with the optional excursions out at your end of the road? I'm assuming she's referring to the Harbor Point development, and that is actually a Shiatic development. It's not a development of ours. So But
What do you know about the cab situation? How come people can't get cabs?
because I don't think we have very many cabs. I mean, honestly, if somebody wanted to start up a cab or a van business, you could be busy all day long. I know days that, passengers come in, they want to know, okay, who do I call for a cab? And it's like, good luck.
So I have a question more for Fortress of the Bears. Was this a good summer?
Very good summer. We were just looking at our numbers of visitors, and we had over 89,000 people come through Fortress this year. Not just the tourists, but also locals on the weekends when it would die down, but they were also bringing visitors from out of town, so it's hard to say just exactly how many came off the cruise ships, but yes.
Well, probably the Raptor Center would say the same thing.
I know that we're probably at fault for some of the cab issues that people have. When people call and ask us how to get out there, we discourage them from taking a cab, but it's easy for a cab to be flagged down in town. They just jump right in, and then they come out to Fortress, so that ties them up on the way out. And then we can't ever get a cab, we can't call them from out there and get them to come out. It's very rare. So when people ask, how do I get back to town, when they came in a cab, we just tell them, sit on the front porch and wait till you see a cab pull in and jump back in and go. Because they don't answer their phones, and there's just not enough of them when there's cruise ships in town.
Well, I'd like to remind my fellow Rotarians that one of our most important, hardworking members is John and Whitecamp. And they moved to Sitka because they visited on a cruise ship and found this to be a very welcoming place.
Chris, a comment and then a question. I don't know if this is realistic, but Uber is not, to my knowledge, available in Sitka, and it's too small of a town normally that it would have Uber. But I wonder if there's somehow to contact Uber and say, look, we have 3 months where this is going to work for somebody. Do you want to, recruit drivers? Just a thought. This question is, are we in competition, say, with Hoona or Petersburg or any of these other towns in terms of decisions from the cruise lines on where they go?
Absolutely. We're really in competition with all of those. Traditional itinerary for a 7-day cruise out of Vancouver or Seattle has been Ketchikan, Juneau, Skagway. With Icy Strait Point, which is Hoona, growing their facility, they've taken some of that business away. They took some of the business away from Sitka. I mean, when you see the numbers back in my chart, where this 2009, 2010, Icy Strait Point was just getting geared up there, and they did take some ships from Sitka. And as new ships come on, places there's still spaces available. So Ward Cove is a new development in Ketchikan at their former pulp mill site. They have 2 berths, very similar to ours. They currently get all the Norwegian ships, but they're competing with us for, like, say, the Royal Caribbean ships that we get. They don't call them Ketchikan. So they would love to steal those Royal Caribbean ships away from us and get them to Ward Cove. Same thing with Icy Strait. The 2 large Royal Caribbean ships that we get called here, they don't call Icy Strait. Icy Strait would love to get those ships, and kind of vice versa. Some of the Norwegian ships that go to Icy Strait, I wouldn't mind having them here. So yes, we are in competition, and a lot of that boils down to the economics for the cruise line. How many tours can they sell? Because they mark up the tours. That's how they make their money. What's the cost of fuel to get to a port? What are the port fees? So all of those things kind of come together to where a ship's going to make a decision on where to go.
Chris, one of my biggest concerns is broadband. I've had 2 telemedicine appointments actually scrubbed because I couldn't make the connection when one of the big ships were in. And I took the FCC test just before 11 o'clock, just after 11 o'clock, when one of the big ships came in. You just saw my through capacity just plummet. And I've also had a board meeting that I wasn't able to attend because I couldn't stay on the Zoom. Are you aware of any efforts to try and improve our broadband so that we don't have this when you've got huge number of ships in?
I'm not, personally, I haven't had any real internet issues. I know cell phones, depending on your carrier. If you have AT&T, big ships are in, good luck. I have GCI. I typically don't have very many issues, other than the data definitely does slow down the number of ships. I guess, I know Starlink is starting to work here now, so it might be an option.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's the fiber optics that are, the private fiber optic lines that come into town and the capacity of those.
I know that some communities have worked with cruise ship companies to improve catch cans access. I'm wondering if there's been any initiative here to do that with fiber.
I'm not aware of any cruise lines getting involved in telecommunications. I know they are more on the kind of the power side and shore power for ships. They're working with various communities on those issues, but I have not heard of anything on telecommunications.
Now it is 1 o'clock, everyone, so if you need to leave, feel free to walk away. Chris, are you okay taking a few more questions, or
Sure.
do you need to go? Okay, so, and again, we really appreciate you speaking to us, so.
I got one for you, not sort of related. I see you out there working and being a stevedore. Is that part of your exercise?
No, it's not being able to find help.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Does the city make any money on selling electricity or water or other services to these cruise ships?
We provide water to some of the ships, and we have to pay the city for the water. So I don't have a number for you, but the city makes money off the water.
Thank you.
Currently, the ships don't take electricity. The capacity isn't there for them to plug in. And I know that's being studied, but some of the ships, the larger ships, would require in excess of 8 megawatts of power.
Now, that's one thing the city reported last Thursday night, is they didn't see a noticeable increase in water or sewer usage. Sewer, of course, would be using restrooms downtown.
One other thing I always do like to touch on from a community standpoint, the city of Sitka obviously spends additional money with toilet paper, additional staff at Centennial Hall. There is a fee that every cruise ship passenger pays to the state of Alaska. It's called the Commercial Passenger Vessel Excise Tax. And the city of Sitka gets $5 for every visitor that comes via cruise ship from that tax. And they're able to utilize those funds to pay for cruise ship related expenditures. So like the bathrooms that got purchased for downtown, those were paid for by the passenger taxes.
So when you were talking about going to Baranoff, would that eliminate all the buses at the Centennial Building or split them all up?
It would be shuttle only. So one of the things you have is you have the ships that tender to Crescent Harbor currently. So those all have tours that are associated with them. So the tour buses are there, would still be there picking up their guests. Or you have dance shows at Centennial Hall. Tour buses come in, drop off guests to go to those dance shows and pick them back up. So you would still have all of that traffic. It would just take that shuttle component out of that congestion. Looks like Rachel Roy made the comment, there's a broadband project being led by the tribes. Tlingit and Haida and Sitka tribe are part of it. Hopefully it will amount to something.
So Chris, did I hear you right? It's $5 a head, so on 380,000, that's about $1.9 million.
Yep.
$1,900,000 outside the sales tax number.
Correct. But those funds have to be utilized for something that benefits the passengers. So if you look at our numbers, so at 550,000, that's going to be $2.5 million, and the city of Sitka will end up with a pretty significant fund for projects to improve items for the cruise ship passengers.
Is it true that Juneau was able to finagle some of that money to rebuild their Centennial Building?
That is my understanding, and $11 million of our Centennial building was paid for with those funds.
Okay, well, that's interesting.
Carrie on the line has something to say.
I have a question about ADA. If you've heard any comments from cruise ship passengers about ADA accessibility in Sitka?
I haven't heard anything specifically from cruise ship passengers. We do offer ADA services for the cruise ship guests. This year we had, or I should say Alaska Coach had a dedicated person and vehicle to accommodate the ADA guests for transfers from the dock to downtown and back. And that'll be the plan going forward as well.
Thank you.
Are there any plans or ideas dealing with the people that are walking down HPR to town that aren't wanting to wait for the shuttle along the highway there? I know it's state roads, but it's like out of...
Improve the shuttle service so that
Okay.
there's not as long of a wait. I do know that there's Trailworks has kind of pitched to DOT doing a separated roadway from the dock out Hollow Point Road to connect to the new cross trail connector to try to make that more accessible for cruise ship passengers.
Did you guys, or your company the one that did the electric bikes that you saw the tourists using this summer?
That wasn't us, but that was somebody else that started that business this summer.
Do you have capacity, or is there a capacity anywhere out there for charter boats and other like small local tour operators to be departing from out there rather than bringing people downtown and then them getting off on
We do
boats?
have, there are some that do choose to do that. And I push that whenever I can, is if a tour operator wants to pick up out there, it will help eliminate that congestion in downtown, and it's less people that have to be moved via the shuttle. So we do have dock space if somebody like a charter boat operator wants to pick up, or if it's a van operator. Yeah, they're more than happy to have them pick up out there.
So I don't know if we're breaking Rotary rules by going over, but is everyone okay if I call it? Good. But hey, Chris, thank you so much. Let's give Chris a big round of applause. So, in some of the side conversations I've had with Chris and even John Leach, I envision the Rotary Club being a resource to try to help make Sitka a better place. Everyone filling out those surveys, I think, helped. The city has a lot of information now, and that information helped you too, in a way, right, Chris?
Oh, absolutely.
But Chris let us know how the Rotary Club can help you. You got some good questions and feedback here. I hope that helps. But thank you for what you've done to help us expand our clean tourism industry here in Sitka. But thanks, everyone. I'd like to adjourn. Go to www.sitkarotary.org to see our schedule for upcoming meetings. And I'd like to adjourn. Thank you, everyone.
Good job. Thank you.